The sun dipped low behind the rolling hills, casting a golden hue over the world outside my window. It was the kind of evening that seemed to promise peace and quiet. But here, in the heart of Meadow Ridge Estates, calm was as elusive as a wisp of smoke in the wind. I'd long accepted that tranquility was a distant dream, courtesy of Karen, our illustrious HOA president. Karen had a knack for pettiness that rivaled the best of them. She wielded the HOA rulebook like a knight's sword, always ready to strike down the slightest of infractions, no more than 2 decorative garden gnomes per lawn. She'd decreed last spring a rule which seemed to exist solely to curb my growing collection. I'd removed all but the one I loved most, a small, smiling fellow who sunbathed beside the basil. Silence was my response, a stoic acceptance that seemed to irk her more than protest ever could. My farmhouse sat on the outskirts of the neighborhood, an old relic standing proud with its weathered red barn and sprawling fields. I'd chosen this place for its promise of space and freedom, miles away from the city's chaos. Ironically, now it was the neighborhood itself, or, more precisely, Karen who brought chaos to my door. Karen's latest enterprise commandeering my barn for her daughter's wedding. She'd decided it offered the perfect rustic backdrop. Her eyes filled with a kind of acquisitive glee as she laid out her grand plans. I'd come home one evening to find her standing in the yard, clipboard in hand, measuring tape flapping in the breeze. It was audacious, an act of sheer nerve that left me both amused and bemused. And so began the parade of minor nuisances. Signs appeared on my property, detailing parking arrangements and guest etiquette. My driveway transformed into a bustling thoroughfare, as caterers and florists and the odd musician trickled in and out, laden with the trappings of a high society wedding. I watched it all unfold with a detached curiosity. There was a certain artistry to her manipulation, like watching a puppet master pull strings only she could see, but I had plans of my own. A quiet strategy hidden beneath layers of patience and feigned indifference. The barn, with its creaky floorboards and rafters filled with swallows, held stories older than any of us. It seemed a shame to fill it with strangers, but there was a certain poetic justice to the idea of letting Karen have her way at first. I allowed the preparations to continue unchecked, observing from a distance as the barn was transformed into a vision of rustic elegance under her meticulous eye. As the day approached, whispers of rebellion stirred within me, a subtle defiance, like the first breath of a storm gathering strength. For now, I remained the calm eye, watching Karen's whirlwind with a serenity she couldn't fathom. But storms have their time. And when they come, they are unstoppable forces of nature. In this quiet, a seed of mischief took root, an idea, like a single spark in the kindling, waiting for its moment. My dogs, loyal companions with a penchant for chaos, seemed to sense the change in the air. Their wild energy mirrored my own quiet anticipation. Soon, I thought the time wasn't ripe yet, but soon, the winds would change, and the storm would follow. As I watched the sun sink below the horizon, I smiled to myself, a knowing smile that held all the secrets of the coming squall. With the morning sun barely creeping over the horizon, the signs of Karen's handiwork began to reveal themselves like unwelcome graffiti on the serene tapestry of our neighborhood. Metal stakes jutted out like misplaced exclamation points, each crowned with crisp white signs scrawled with the latest decrees from the Homeowners Association. It was as if a general had mapped out her battle plan on my doorstep. I couldn't help but marvel at the layers of irony. My barn, still harboring fragments of rice and crushed petals, had been commandeered for a celebration that was only supposed to be temporary. Yet, here it stood, a newfound monument to Karen's ability to make the temporary feel eternal. The signs declared new rules with the authority of a dictator. No dogs without leashes, no structures without permits, no gatherings without approval. Each one felt like an arrow loosed in my direction, aimed to puncture the quiet bubble of autonomy I had cherished for years. I nodded to myself, a sardonic smile playing on my lips. It was as if Karen believed bureaucracy itself could bind the spirit as well as the body. Little did she realize. Her rules were but paper chains around my feet, easily torn and tossed aside. Neighborly whispers floated through the air like the first chill of autumn. Karen's tales, twisted and exaggerated, danced from ear to ear. The story of the wedding, now a legend, was distorted into something almost mythic. Each retelling painted me as an unruly specter at the feast, casting shadows over the joyous occasion. It was amusing. In a way, a simple farm with its rustic charm had become a stage for a drama that no one asked for. I listened, letting the gossip wash over me like an incoming tide. The accusatory glances and hushed tones were impotent weapons, blunted by the sheer absurdity of it all. I found myself wondering if Karen realized how much her actions were pushing the boundaries of farce. My thoughts drifted to the barn, now adorned with remnants of lace and forgotten vows. The barn was innocent. After all, an unassuming structure that had seen generations of seasons, births, and farewells. It had weathered storms more potent than Karen's petty declarations, and it would stand long after her paper edicts had faded. The dogs, blissfully unaware of the human drama, lay sprawled in various states of contentment, their dreams untroubled by the unfolding theatrics. Perhaps they understood the truth better than most, that life, at its core, was less about rules and more about the simple joys of companionship and freedom. A subtle resistance stirred within me. I would let Karen continue her dance of rules and gossip. I would let her believe she had power, for in her frenzy to control, she was blind to the quiet rebellion that brewed. In every rule she cast, in every tale she spun, she sowed the seeds of her own undoing. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and what Karen failed to grasp was this: the play was far from over. The night crept forward, shadows elongating under the soft, silvery glow of the moon. I stood at the edge of my property, the barn illuminated in a warm, festive glow. The chatter and clinking of glasses drifted down the hill, carried on the night air like a melodic whisper. Karen's wedding was in full swing, a tableau vivant of polished shoes and sparkling gowns, an unauthorized spectacle on my land. My eyes scanned the scene, taking in the meticulous decorations, the strings of lights that twinkled like stars captured and tethered to earth. It was a beautiful violation, an elegant trespass. Karen had orchestrated a flawless invasion, her audacity wrapped in the guise of nuptial bliss. A bitter taste lingered at the back of my throat, a mix of salt and unshed grievances. She had stepped over the line, painted over it, and danced atop it in heels too high for comfort. Documentation had been my first refuge, a camera slung around my neck like a silent witness. I captured every detail: the florals draping the barn doors, the tables laden with delicate china, the guests oblivious to the boundary they trespassed. Each click of the shutter was a small act of defiance, a reminder of my own quiet power, petty, perhaps, but necessary. The dogs watched me with keen eyes, their ears perked, twitching at the distant sound of laughter. Harley, the oldest, lay beside me, head resting on my feet, as if he understood the gravity of the night. They sensed the tension, the undercurrent of something amiss. Animals have a way of knowing. I thought of the times Karen had knocked on my door, clipboard in hand, enforcing rules with a smile that never reached her eyes. She'd prattle on about lawn heights, mailbox standards, the colors of doors, petty tyrannies wrapped in neighborly concern. And now, here she was, rewriting the rules to suit her own narrative. A real-life plot twist with no regard for the supporting characters. The plan had formed slowly, an idea woven from threads of irritation and fairness. It wasn't grand or malicious, just a gentle reminder of boundaries. I'd let the dogs have their fun. A wedding needs unexpected guests. After all, the moment came as the music swelled, a crescendo that seemed to call out to the night itself. A subtle cue. I released Harley and the others, their excitement palpable as they bounded down the hill. A flurry of fur and wagging tails. They weren't a menace, just a boisterous reminder of the world that existed beyond the manicured confines of Karen's dictated norm. Chaos ensued in the most charming way. Guests laughed and stumbled back, dresses caught in playful paws, canines weaving through the crowd with unrestrained joy, laughter and confusion mixed in the air, a symphony of startled amusement. I watched from a distance, a quiet spectator to the unfolding drama. Karen's expression shifted through a spectrum of emotions: shock, disbelief, a flicker of anger quickly masked by the veneer of graciousness. It was an irony not lost on me. Watching her navigate the delicate dance of maintaining composure amidst unexpected chaos, for a brief moment, our eyes met across the distance, hers filled with a silent plea, a request for assistance or perhaps understanding. I simply raised my glass in acknowledgement, a toast to boundaries rediscovered and the stories we tell ourselves. With the dogs now part of the ensemble, the wedding found a new rhythm, one less about perfection and more about shared, unexpected moments. As the night deepened, I turned away from the glow of the barn, the laughter still echoing in the cool air. Karen would understand, or she wouldn't. But tonight, the lines were drawn anew, sketched in paw prints and moonlit paths. It was my land, after all. The rumors spread like wildfire, crackling through the neighborhood. First, a whisper on the cul-de-sac, then a rustle among the azaleas. It was as if the entire community buzzed with the kind of latent energy one feels before a storm. I watched from my porch, the old wood creaking beneath the weight of my thoughts. The sun was dipping low, casting golden streaks across the fields. Evening was a painter, and this scene, a masterpiece, but tension hung in the air, thick as the scent of honeysuckle in July. Karen's wedding had been the latest spectacle, a grand, unauthorized affair staged within the rustic charm of my barn. The audacity still burned, a slow simmer beneath my skin. But the dogs, my loyal, unruly pack, had been my unexpected allies, unleashed. They had crashed the party, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. Cake toppled, guests scattered, a perfect, unplanned retaliation. Now, the neighborhood pulsed with the aftermath. I could see them, the neighbors, congregating near the picket fences. Their voices rose and fell, an ocean of murmurs. Eyes occasionally flicked toward my property, filled with curiosity and judgment. Karen's influence was waning, her kingdom quietly crumbling. In the distance, Karen herself was a solitary figure, her silhouette sharp against the dying light. Her dignity, once unassailable, now seemed fragile, like porcelain teetering on the edge. She stood, hands on hips, surveying the grounds. Perhaps she pondered how quickly order had turned to disarray, how power had slipped through her fingers like sand. The dogs sprawled lazily at my feet, oblivious to the drama they'd incited. Sometimes, simplicity held the greatest wisdom. Their eyes, soulful and content, were a reminder that beneath the surface, life was straightforward. Their tails thumped against the floorboards in quiet approval. The weight of the moment settled in my chest. I felt both architect and spectator of this unfolding play. The irony was not lost on me. Karen and her meticulousness, undone by something as mundane as a dog pack, it was poetic. In a way, justice wrapped in fur and wagging tails. A breeze picked up, rustling the leaves and carrying with it the tang of earth and promise. It whispered secrets, ancient and untold. The world continued its dance, indifferent to our small dramas. As twilight deepened, the neighbors began to disperse. Their curiosity temporarily sated. The streetlights flickered awake, casting gentle pools of light on the asphalt. My porch light joined them, a solitary beacon. The dogs stirred, shifting positions, their warmth a comfort against the encroaching night. I rose, Stretching the stiffness from my limbs, the house waited, a sanctuary from the outside world. Before retreating inside, I glanced once more at Karen. She lingered, a solitary figure against the backdrop of stars. Her resolve, once unyielding, now seemed to waver. Perhaps she'd learn from this, find humility in chaos, or perhaps not. Time would tell. I turned, the door closing softly behind me. The night was young, and the story far from over. In the quiet of my home, I welcomed the embrace of solitude. Outside, the world continued to spin, a tapestry of stories, of triumphs and defeats, and somewhere in the distance, the faint, melodic howl of a dog echoed through the night. As the cacophony of barking and yelping faded into the cool night, I stood at the edge of my porch, bathed in the soft glow of the porch light, watching the aftermath of Karen's ill-fated wedding unfold. The guests, in their finery, now looked more like lost souls at the gates of a particularly chaotic purgatory, their bewilderment almost palpable in the darkness. The scattered white petals on the barn floor, meant to symbolize purity and new beginnings, were now just a muddled mess beneath the paw prints, a fitting metaphor for the tangled web Karen had spun. 2 weeks of meticulous planning had led to this night. I had approached the situation with the precision of a chess player eyeing a checkmate, quietly, stealthily. I had documented every overstepped boundary, every breach of protocol, Karen's haughty laughter, which had echoed through the neighborhood as she declared herself untouchable, now seemed distant, swallowed by the weight of her impending downfall. Her hubris had been her Achilles' heel. The legal papers were already in motion, their bureaucratic heft matched by their potential impact. Each carefully crafted paragraph was a scalpel, honing in on the transgressions with unerring precision. The HOA bylaws, normally a dull hum in the background of suburban life, had become my symphony, and I was the conductor. Karen had underestimated the potency of quiet resolve. Her arrogance was her downfall, her assumption of power a mirage dissolving in the night's cool air. The irony was almost poetic. The events of the evening had unfolded like a tapestry, unraveling at its edges. Guests, initially perturbed by the unexpected canine invasion, had begun to leave in ones and twos, until only a few lingered, picking at the remnants of the buffet like vultures at a carcass. Beyond the barn, the moon hung high, an impartial witness to the drama below. As the last car pulled away, its taillights fading into the distance, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. There was no satisfaction in vengeance, but there was a grim justice and balance being restored. The dogs, now content and sprawled lazily on the grass, had been unwitting agents of that balance. Beneath the surface of this quiet night, the gears of justice were turning. I felt no need for grand declarations or triumphant gestures. The truth was its own victory. The inevitability of consequences, a silent but powerful testament to order reasserting itself. Karen would learn, as so many had before her, that actions had repercussions, and that the quietude of the night could harbor storms waiting to break. In the end, it was not the loudest voice or the most ostentatious display that prevailed, but the patient hand, steadily, inexorably setting things right. As I turned to go inside, I felt the night wrap around me like a cloak, the stars above twinkling in silent accord. Justice, I mused, moves silently, but it moves. And with that thought, I closed the door softly behind me, leaving the past to settle in the cooling air. The barn was a symphony of chaos. Dogs barked with the fervor of uninvited guests who'd been waiting all their lives for a moment like this. The elegant, white stone path leading into the barn was now a canvas of canine footprints, a testament to the unexpected intersection of Karen's world and mine. The guests, once pristine in their attire, now dappled with patches of mud and tufts of fur scattered like startled birds, It was a sight to behold, a mosaic of panic and disbelief. Karen stood in the eye of the storm, her once commanding presence reduced to a flurry of impotent gestures. Her shrill attempts to restore order disappeared into the cacophony. It was beautiful. I stood back, a statue in the corner, unnoticed amid the swirling chaos, a quiet observer in the theater of retribution. The dogs, my faithful, uninvited companions, danced around the guests, their joy unblemished by human indignation. They were the ultimate gatecrashers, reveling in the freedom I had granted them, a freedom that mirrored my own gently bubbling satisfaction. Around me, the barn transformed. It was no longer the backdrop for Karen's grandiose vision, but a testament to rustic unpredictability. The once meticulously arranged tables became makeshift obstacle courses, the floral arrangements repurposed as chew toys. I watched as the carefully crafted illusion of perfection crumbled into delightful disarray. The guests began to trickle away, drifting towards the exit with bemused expressions. Their whispered judgments painted the air, a symphony of schadenfreude that resonated through the rafters. They had come for a wedding, and instead found a story, one they would tell for years, with gleaming eyes and knowing winks. Karen remained, her eyes cast daggers in my direction, but I merely offered her a gentle nod, the kind you give an old friend who has finally learned an overdue lesson. There was a peculiar satisfaction in the simplicity of it all. No words, no apologies, just the understanding that the balance had restored itself in the most unexpected of ways. The last of the guests disappeared into the night, leaving only the echoes of their departure. I stepped forward, surveying the aftermath. A mess, yes, but one that would fade with time. The barn would forgive, its wooden bones holding no grudges. Like the earth itself, it would absorb this disruption and sprout anew. Karen lingered a moment more. Her purpose diminished. She glanced my way, a flicker of something respect, perhaps passing over her features. Then she turned, heels clicking against the hard floor as she walked into the night. I was alone. The dogs came to me, tails wagging, eyes full of unspoken allegiance. Together, we took in the scene, in the quiet aftermath. A thought unfurled like a solitary flower blossoming in a forgotten field. Maybe, just maybe, the community would find its way back, without a sovereign, without a queen. The barn stood empty now, save for the echoes of our small rebellion, and in that emptiness, a new beginning beckoned, one without fanfare, without ceremony, just the quiet, steady resolve of life as it should be.